YouTubers, Mike Martins here with the Mike Martins channel. We got another Douglas Todd article. Dramatic jump in guest workers hurts Canadians on low wages. So, what does this even mean? Well, it's an opinion piece by Douglas Todd. Let's find out. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has greatly expanded the country's guest work programs, largely under the public's radar. So, this is from yesterday. So I'm going to tell you, I'm not sure what's happening in your neck of the woods if you're living in Canada, but I could tell you there's a lot of people that can't find employment. They are having a really tough time getting anything. I'm talking about even fast food work, anything in any sector. They can't find anything. So I know some people have been out of work for 2 years and they just won't be hired. So I'm not sure what this means, or is it going to be tougher? Let's find out. A big jump in the number of guest workers is hurting low-wage employees and others across Canada, according to economists. The number of non-permanent foreign workers arriving in Canada each year has doubled in the past decade, escalating particularly after the federal Liberal government was elected in 2015. Partially as a result of the increasing flow of guest workers, UBC economist David Green and Carleton University's Christopher Warzek says in a paper, new immigrants are doing worse and worse in regards to earned incomes. And it's Canada's low-wage workers who are suffering the most. Even though businesses frequently lobby politicians to allow more guest employees, Green says the latest hikes are putting downward pressure on wages and threatening respect for workers. They're exacerbating the kind of scenario, he said, that led to the rise of Donald Trump and Britain's Brexit movement. So, you know what happened with that? A lot of people don't believe the whole liberal leftist agenda anymore. So what do people do? They start becoming more conservatives. There's a lot of liberals now coming out of liberalism and coming into more conservativeness. People that believe in family, people that believe in protecting the rights of their country and what they've built and blah blah blah, right? It's kind of important. If you don't have a conservative voice, or if there's no conservative voice, you'll start seeing things decaying really quick in a heartbeat. If it's all geared to the left, right? It's a big problem. Saying it's truly dumb for the federal government to continue boasting low-skilled guest workers in the country, Green emphasized the vast majority of Canadians don't appear to be aware of the labor market shift. It's totally under the radar. While temporary workers are initially billed as a way to rescue business, okay, so they throw that out there that we're going to save businesses by bringing in more guest workers that needed to make up short-term skills shortages in certain sectors. Low-skilled guest workers from overseas are now increasingly being bought in to staff fast food restaurants, fill shelves at supermarkets, and perform basic kitchen duties. In the face of 2013 backlash against the increased volume of foreign workers in Canada, former Conservative Immigration Minister Jason Kennedy drastically cut their numbers, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has jacked up the totals much higher. The new river of guest workers in Canada releases the pressure on firms provided better jobs where you have control over your time, where the pay is decent. It lets the steam off, and that pushes us towards a society that doesn't respect workers so much, said Green, a professor in the Vancouver School of Economics and fellow Institute of Financial Studies in London. It's difficult for the public to recognize that guest worker numbers have grown at much faster pace than more often discussed immigration levels, which have expanded 30% since 2015, with about 320,000 now being approved annually. Wow. So guys, we have something going on here in Canada, and there's a lot of numbers, okay? Let me bring this other article up too. So we got this article going, right? Let me bring up the one I bring up all the time. Canada wants more Chinese. Right? More Chinese, right? And I'll show you guys what I'm trying to talk about this, so we can actually start sticking these articles together. So Canada wants more Chinese, and they've already built fast tracking centers to bring in more Chinese. Now, if you go down here, Canada's competing. So McCullum says visas have been increasing from China to about 500,000 per year. But opening more visa offices could help Canada compete for Chinese workers, students, and lucrative tourists. So this is just from China, 500,000 per year. And then they're looking at something else here for temporary foreign workers, and they're approving 320,000 annually. So I'm not sure there's how many like different sectors. I'm not an immigration expert. I'm an immigrant. I'm a Portuguese myself. So I'm not sure how many different brackets are there within the immigration system. You have these temporary workers that are 320,000 per year. You have the people from China only, because they're competing for rich, lucrative people. That's 500,000 per year. So, like, how many people are Canada really realistically bringing in, right? So let's keep reading this article here. The official temporary foreign work program, which attracted such controversy in the controversies era, has not greatly expanded, but other worker efforts have. One jump has come through the doubling of the international students. In 2015, about 200,000 foreign students were arriving each year, but last year the number arriving of student visas has ballooned to more than 400,000. Okay, so now let's add this up. 320,000 temporary workers, 400,000 students, and then 500,000 Chinese. That's 4, 5, 6, 9, 12. But you go to Stats Canada, look at immigration numbers, it shows like 80,000 people came to Canada. It makes no sense, right? And a lot of these people that come here stay. Nobody goes back to the country. Very little bit of just very small fraction of people go back to their country. One jump has come through the doubling of international students. I already read that, to 400,000. More foreign students are allowed to work 20 hours a week, plus full-time during the summer on other breaks. The least known migration policy change, however, has arguably been the biggest one of the labor market that has fourfolded expansion of the so-called international mobility program, about which few Canadians have heard. In 2005, about 70,000 guest workers arrived under the international mobility category, but by 2018, Canada was accepting more than 215,000 in this category, which is typically made up of people of 2-year visas, many of them who find jobs in the service sector. Informally known as travelers or on holiday worker visas, such as employees are often associated with young Australians working in ski resorts like Whistler. I met a lot when I was in Whistler. Or with British globetrotters serving beer in pubs in Vancouver and Toronto. A UBC-backed website called Super Diversity, which has created an interactive graphics based on immigration deportation data, shows the largest group of more than 250,000 international mobility workers have arrived in Canada last year from India, followed by those from the US and China, France and South Korea. Yeah, France is open. France, for some reason, for France, European immigration is closed. Canada closed immigration for Europeans, and I think it was in '96. So Europeans were not welcome in Canada anymore. I think in '93 or '96, guys. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that. France, if you're from France and you speak French, they pay you for your flight to come here. Toronto took in 70,000 international mobility workers in 2018, while Vancouver absorbed 30,000. The volume of guest workers arriving in Canada each year leapt over the federal governments were selected. So here it is. Look at the numbers there, guys. To study, humanitarian, study, IMP, and TFWP. It's temporary, I don't know, something like that. That's from 1980. So look back in the 80s. Most of these, like the people that came in here, like in the 80s, this was pretty much all Europeans at the time, right? And then up after 93, you can start to see the poop hit the fan, where numbers just started to go nuts. In line with research, American economist Giovanni and the University of Ottawa's Pierre Green describe how owners of Tim Hortons franchise, a cafe supermarket, often try to justify bringing in more guest workers by saying they can't find anyone to fill the low skill slot. So they go to their local MP and say, I'm in trouble here. I can't get enough workers for my front counter. The real response to them should be, well, pay them more, but it's not the answer they want to hear because they want to make more profit, Green said. Economists don't really think it's the problem that fast food restaurant owner or the service sector employer can't hire workers at low wages, said Green. While something is scarce, the price for it all goes up and people and companies adjust. That's the whole wonder of the capitalist system. The low wage problem is exacerbated in places like Metro Vancouver, where the cost of renting or owning homes is extreme. Instead of offering decent living wages to people who live there, Gary said many bosses are inclined to hire people who live in housing with 5 other foreign workers. A second trouble with Canadian companies increasingly relying on low-wage guest workers, Green said it leads to more fearful workforce incapable of demanding adherence to local labor standards or forming a union. So what happened is I spoke to a couple of these restaurant slash, service workers, and they said that they prefer to hire people to train them. They don't prefer Canadians working there because a lot of them do apply. What people need to do, so people don't start calling and pointing the finger and calling everybody a liar. A lot of people apply at Tim Hortons. They just don't want to hire because they hire a high school graduate that understands workplace safety and understands all that stuff. Guess what? They're not going to get the job. Oh, he speaks perfect English, and he's not going to get the job. That's what's been happening, and I noticed that a lot. That happens a lot here in Canada. So there has to be some sort of a cycle where it becomes public knowledge, like where it becomes a public information, where how many people applied for, let's say, working at McDonald's or Tim Hortons or Dairy Queen. How many people applied and how many people are local Canadians and how many of them are And you'll be surprised how many local Canadians get turned down positions. You'd be very surprised. Everybody knows that these guest workers have no rights. If if they lose their jobs, they're gone. They're not about to complain. Canadian firms are now not only getting just lower wage workers for these days, they're getting very compliant workers, said Green. Even though a lot of commentators write off the supporters of Trump and Brexit as just stupid people, Green said many have been workers who felt the promise of globalization, the transitional movement of capital and labor, has not benefited them. These are people who feel there was a deal promised to them where everyone would share in the benefits of deregulation and more flexible labor market, said Green. But then governments did things that bring in more temporary foreign workers. Those people are feeling like, well, what the heck just happened? If you want people to feel like they have a share, don't bring in somebody to replace them every time their wages start looking like they're going to go up. So yeah, anyone that's looking like to get a raise, or anyone that looks like they're going to take the boss's job, or maybe even assistant manager's job away, they put them through a tough time, and it becomes a revolving door in a lot of these places. And the same thing when I was young, I was too young. Because what happened was in the early 90s, summer vacation from high school, I was too late. I missed the boat. The guys that were ahead of me, like the older friends I had on my street that were 4 or 5 years older than me, always had summer jobs every year. The time when it was my time, from grade 9, when I went out to it's summer job time, nobody was hiring because there was a lot of foreign workers that came in, and they're more reliable. They're adults. They're not kids like, high school kids, and they work for whatever wage, and basically, there's no, you know what I'm saying, right? So I missed the boat for summer jobs. So every summer I was just doing nothing. My parents, oh, go get a job, go get a job. It's like, no, I applied everywhere. And that's just how it worked up until pretty much until grade 12. I did a co-op program. Then I started rebuilding automatic transmissions, and then I became a transmission rebuilder for years. I did really well at that. I even opened my own shop in Florida. But still, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's a lot hidden. How many different brackets of immigration are there? Like if you're seeing it here, you got so many brackets. But then, where does this fall under? 500,000 Chinese per year. Those are lucrative investors, though. So that's another bracket of. So when you go to StatsCan, there's this guy named Francois that keeps posting links on my videos to links to Canada numbers and stuff, showing what Canada's telling its people. I don't believe what Canada's telling its people. I believe what all these numbers here are starting to add up, and they're not adding up to what we're being told. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I would like to know. Comment below. Thanks for watching.